Hi, I'm Lily.
And I'm Dan.
And we are The Load In.
Good afternoon. I was about to join in.
I know,
then.
I was just like...
And then you're like
whenever
waiting
you
for
whenever
me.
you feel like it.
Like, I always mess it up though, so that's why I always like look at Lily and be like, Lily can do it.
So I should have jumped in and just said...
Well, seriously, you should have.
Right.
Because we've got to do an intro to it, and we used to try and do like this little really dorky jingle.
It was really cheesy.
And then we're like, all right, well, one of us will just say it, but every now and then, who knows? Just jump in when you feel it.
Oh, I'm just being a bit of a diva at the moment.
Well, you know, when the events come back in, you'll be hyped up getting in there. Okay, well, we digress. Today we've got someone that I'm very excited to have on the show. Marianna, welcome.
Thank you.
So CEO and founder of BIZZMOSIS.
Mate, guilty.
That's you. Guilty as charged. Before we go into the business side of things, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you end up in Dubai?
Oh, what a coincidence was to end up in Dubai. I was running away from too many duties at 21 years old. Oh, God. Yeah, exactly.
You ran away to the circus, didn't you?
Yeah, I ran away to the circus.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I was blessed to be in the business world, in the diplomatic world since I'm 13, actually. Wow. I participated in a lot of government events and was under the shadow, obviously too young to be employed, but present in so many meetings in Moldova, where I'm from.
Okay.
And then obviously the Ministry of Youth, the Ministry of Education, Embassy of Moldova in Romania, then Romanian Embassy in Moldova.
Wow.
Then
so quite busy.
Exactly. So a long year.
What were you doing at 21?
Me?
Yeah.
Fire breathing. I actually was.
I think I was just out.
Working in clubs, working
I was
in bars.
out. I was having too good of a time.
Yeah, I was just probably too curious.
Yeah.
And too curious brought me to Dubai. 21, while being in Romania, I was leading a shop with over 10,000 employees. And I think it was a bit too much because I was lacking experience. Too. Exactly.
Right. 10,000 employees.
At 21.
I should go 9. Like, no, you're all right.
Yeah, I fell into that job obviously through networking, and actually I've built what I am today through networking, and I think this is I think everybody learned, especially during COVID, that is the goal of growing up. There's no competition. There's actually help each other.
It's community.
And
sure.
exactly.
That's been a real theme for us.
Like with every conversation that we've had recently, it's about this like collaboration.
It really is the silver lining.
Yeah,
it really 100%. Has been the silver lining, and it's been what's made our podcast just like overnight. It's like everyone's been so positive. Everyone's been coming in. Everyone's been ready to help, and they come in and share the knowledge that they have just to be able to help other people, which is why we're here.
Yeah.
So long story short, now at 21, I've joined Emirates Airline, and. Yeah, exactly. Well, I said, I've worked hard.
Yeah.
Now let's go play hard.
Yeah.
Of course.
Brilliant. Whatever than Emirates Airlines.
Like
brilliant.
5-star hotel.
Pilot, cabin crew.
Well, I married a pilot.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. Again, guilty as charged. I met him on my first ever flight.
No way.
Really?
So there you go. Fun life, isn't it? And and we married in 10 years together now.
Wow.
And a wonderful child. And the second super tantrumy child, my own business. So...
It's a very true story.
Which is BIZZMOSIS. And before I let you go and tell us a bit more about the business, I want to know about the name.
Oh, BIZZMOSIS. Well, BIZZMOSIS is actually business osmosis. That's how the name came together. And in economic terms, learning through osmosis means learning easily, so without actually making an effort. So my idea was actually making business easy and help people through osmosis of it.
I remember it in science class. I know osmosis.
Exactly. So make it sweet and easy and simple and clear.
Yeah.
And I think this is what the UAE lacks nowadays, is clarity on information. Government puts out a lot of support and a lot of information available, but the industry, let's say the industry is still unclear in the direction of this information and how to use this information, how to apply this information. Moreover,
I often feel like we get that information, but then it gets kind of dissected and misinterpreted from different aspects when, like
and depending on who you speak to.
Or someone's opinion, someone says, this is how you do it.
That was the hardest part about it. And especially like you did mention that you've been doing this for over 20 years, but as BIZZMOSIS, it's been more predominantly the last 10 years.
10 years, correct.
So when you started, it was a jigsaw puzzle?
It was. Well, I started by doing everything by myself, obviously, and learning it from the grounds. You come in a foreign country, how would you know how to set up a license here, right? So I actually went to every single department of the government and slept under their doors and made them
bang on it.
I kid you not. Like, I would come out of their office, cry in the corner, come back and insist to get what I want. So
because it wasn't readily available.
It wasn't readily available in English, first of all. So information maybe could have reached out easier in Arabic, but I'm not an Arabic speaker. Yeah. And then most of the support I needed from the government for my initial clients was actually just the correct understanding of the business model. The government in the UAE is and was very supportive, and this is how they grow. But it's always the loss in translation, because we all have cultural diversities. Like, look, the three of us, right?
We cover the globe.
So that difference in how coaching is seen in Europe and how it's in here and how it's regulated here, that difference in how training is seen and how the word healing is seen, right? Healing here is treatment, while abroad healing can be a sound healing. How can you treat with sound, right? So this is the loss in translation that happened due to cultural diversity and the lack of understanding of intricacies of the beautiful Arabic language and how some words can have different understanding.
And I guess in many ways that's amplified because Dubai in particular has grown so fast.
Exactly.
You know, so you have that kind of, I guess, like that misunderstanding originally, and then obviously like it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
But can you imagine going into like do your trade license and give your business name? Like how would they have reacted to BIZZMOSIS, for example? Do you know what I mean? Because in Arabic, what would you write?
It doesn't make sense.
Well, initially the law actually said that your name has to have a meaning. If it doesn't, it has to be a trademark. So obviously BIZZMOSIS doesn't have a meaning. And I didn't have a trademark, you know, it costs a lot of money to have a trademark as a startup. So that was, for example, the first challenge that I had to go through and explain to them what BIZZMOSIS means and then how to write it in Arabic correctly. And that's like visit after visit after visit.
Banging on that door again.
Exactly. And
crying in the corner again.
Sleeping on the floor.
You would laugh, but that happened.
I would absolutely believe it. You know, we've all had to go get information from the ministries, from the government, and because I think a lot of it has to do with the fact with how quickly the UAE has grown. That, you know, trying to keep up with everything and trying to get everything up to date, it's not easy.
Well, I mean, it's constantly evolving, and we're going to get into this shortly, which is going to be like one of the hot topics of this discussion. But, you know, even over the last like 5 or 6 years, there's been massive progress and massive change, I guess, in terms of like visas, trade licenses, and all of that. Which I'm not going to jump the gun.
Well, no, but we're going to go into it. But one of the main reasons, like as I've said, we're going to get you back on the show quite a bit because you cover so many topics.
100%. Like just the conversation. I was like, sorry, I should have called you 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
However, no.
But one of the reasons why both Dan and I were really passionate about getting you in was to look after freelancers, because during when COVID hit and overnight the event industry disappeared, the ones that were hit the most were freelancers, because you know they were the first line to sort of get the we don't need you at the moment. And when it came to the grant, the creative grant and the support from the government, you had to fill out an application and all of that. And a lot of freelancers that needed it from the word go couldn't even submit because they didn't have the right paperwork.
Well, a lot of people did submit and tried to submit, but then got rejected on the basis that obviously
of the wrong
paperwork wasn't correct. And many people from the conversations that we had were like, well, we just don't know what to do.
Yes.
You know,
I agree
or
with
it's too cost prohibitive, or there's easier ways, there's cost effective solutions, but ultimately, you know.
And it was the confusion, you know, because like that was the thing. Like I remember speaking to you back in February, you know, and we were chatting, and you know, this whole thing of people thinking that there's a freelance visa, there isn't, you know, and this conversation has been going on for months. So what we really would love you to talk us through is, okay, you're a freelancer, you work in the event industry. How do you become legal?
Yeah. Exactly. Well,
I know it's a huge topic.
It is.
But
just
as a...
We will probably disseminate it into further meetings and go into the legalities.
Well, we'd want people to be able to get in touch with you after this show.
Because that's been one of the big things. I'm just thinking, like, for me and what we do is we supply entertainment and we work with performers. And previously in the past, many of them have been on like visit visas, for example, which is technically you're working here illegally.
Yeah.
Because
the visa says you're not allowed to work.
Or we'd often get people, I think that was Taco, dog in the background. We'd often get you know, people who's working on a housewife visa, for example, or a student, or etc. etc. I think previously, before, it was such a grey area, but it's not really. It is very black and white. And I think now
there've been so many changes. You know, talk us through them. Sort of top level.
Okay. Look, first I'll start with saying I'm passionate about gaining knowledge. I'm absolute, you know, living on the adrenaline of these constant changes. Some people might see it daunting, and I understand it, but I live on them. I love them. I research them. I study them. I've done 2 master's degrees into my PhD now because I love to.
Because you don't have enough to do.
Yeah, somehow.
PhD.
3-year-old child, business, you know.
Yeah, lots of pets. But it's all about passion towards freelancing. And actually, BIZZMOSIS, when it started, I didn't want it to be a business. I literally registered my license 4 days away from my due date to deliver my baby. So I didn't see, I'm going to deliver a baby and have 20 employees. No, I wanted to be a freelancer. But it didn't exist here. So I went to so many departments and to so many authorities by myself. And I want to be a freelancer. Oh, Habibi, there's no license.
It's interesting you say that, because that was the same situation for me. And that was like back in 2015.
Exactly.
So it was
2011 for me. So it was just...
Yeah,
what?
So
it's just not there.
I was going to say, so I left my previous company, and then obviously, you know, I have to go legit. You know, you need a visa, a trade license, and all the rest of it. And all of a sudden, it became a business overnight. And I'm like,
exactly.
Kind of wasn't what I was thinking.
That's not quite, but Mum would be happy.
Well, she would be, yeah. I think, hopefully.
Proud.
Yeah. So this is close to my heart because I've been through this struggle. And then when I went and they kept quoting me for 60,000, 70,000, I was like, wait a second. I didn't even sell for 1,000, and you want me to engage on 60. And I understand so many people, because we work along with the government authorities at federal level, local level, the Chamber of Commerce, free zones authorities, to create these platforms and to support them in understanding the freelancers. And in a way, it's about costs, but not only the costs, right? Yeah. So freelancing in the Middle East was the dinosaurs, right, in the room. It didn't even... it wasn't considered as actually
it wasn't really talked about, was it?
A wave, an industry, something, right?
Well, because it didn't fit that sponsorship model, which was very traditional of like, you're employed, you have a sponsor, and
someone's got to be responsible for you.
Someone kind of is in charge of you.
Yeah. Yes, because of the the volatility of the region, especially the UAE, and how easy people come and go. Yeah. The government felt probably more secure and comfortable,
and someone having to be responsible for you, for your actions. Exactly. If anything goes wrong,
you know,
and
plus if you can inject 60,000 in setting up a company, you're most probably going to have enough money to run it. So it was a less probability of defaults, runaways, and whatever. But I think it was not enough differentiation between what a freelancer is and what actually a business is, and how you can regulate it, and how even the law has to accommodate such licensing, right? So about 5 years ago, and you're correct, they started bringing it into Saudi Arabia, into Oman, into Kuwait, into the UAE, and playing, coquetting around it, right? And how's it going to work, and what should we do about it? And obviously, even until today, there's not a freelance permit for any industry. It's still focused around media, which is the most common, obviously.
Of course.
IT, which is everything to do with development and software development, and then some of it with training and coaching. But it's still quite regulated, and it's still cost-effective, cheaper than a license, but not the cheapest. And I think it is going in the right direction. By the way, listeners, stay tuned, because we're going to have a few announcements later in the week, in a few weeks, of the new freelance platforms that are being launched, or will be launched. Exactly. And I personally, just before we started the meeting, I told you about 4 huge names in the world of freelancing worldwide, which are software companies, have registered through us in the UAE.
Which is a great sign, isn't it? It's
That's
a positive sign.
That is like the future, like the whole like digitalization and the digital nomads and that.
Well, just look at COVID's shown that, hasn't it? That you don't have to be sitting in an office.
Well, yeah, because it's almost like that whole business model before of like, you need a physical work desk, you need an office, you need a space to be in.
It's dissolved.
It's gone.
And the cost to maintain that employee.
Massive.
I'd rather pay those costs to a really good freelancer instead of to an average employee on constant expenditure, right?
Well, it's like when we set up the business, it was, we needed an office. It's part of the obligations of the trade license and everything else. Like we're doing the visas, and the visas are linked to the I guess like the square footage of the office and so forth. But as an event company or as creatives, like we work remotely. We are digital, so we could have people, which has happened during the pandemic, like working in Canada, working in South Africa, and so forth. So questions like, why do we need that office?
But not just that. as the events industry, you spend more time on site than you do in an office. So to have an office sitting there as a pretty chunky overhead is quite painful.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's changing.
It is changing. I guess like that's why I guess now we're seeing these type of, I guess, new regulations and new ways of working, because that whole digital nomadic culture is happening in all major cities around the world. Yeah. And, you know, Dubai wants to, I guess, compete with that, or the UAE in particular.
They need to.
Yeah. But Dubai is moving ahead very fast in the area of freelancing. As I said, we have these licensed platforms that soon are going to be released, which are actually platforms similar to freelancer.com and so many others, where you know, the client puts a tender, opens a tender on a project, and then freelancers bid for it, and then that transaction is legalized through that platform, and obviously the payment and deliverables.
That's great.
So I've done an event with the Dubai Chamber recently, and we focused on it was a trilogy of events, and the third session was about freelancers. And we've discovered about 80% increase in the freelance demand is just the 2 years in the Middle East.
Wow.
But there's no platforms focused at freelancers, licensed and specialized. We're talking cultural diversity, we're talking cultural awareness, you know, the whole need of the Middle East in the freelance industry is just so little, right?
Yeah.
So it goes away, it goes up fast. So I think the freelancers that do want to target this market need to act quickly to be here, you know, in the time to get
because right now, as a freelancer, the options are, or the way that most of them go about doing it is visa runs.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Getting a visa off someone else.
Well, yeah, on a different business activity. So it's like my friend owns a barber shop. I'm on their visa.
They get a spare visa from them.
Yeah.
What other ways are people doing it?
Or they set up their own business or company,
or
but it's not
it's usually Ras Al Khaimah or Fujairah because it's a cheaper option. But then that actually poses difficulties. There are risks there.
Yeah.
So for the guys out there right now, if we've got freelancers there going, you know what, I want to go legal.
Yep.
It's not even I want to go legal, it's I have to go legal.
Well, not everyone gets there.
Well,
we have to say,
I
think, we have to discuss the risks, so at least people understand if I don't go legal, what do I risk? Okay? In different situations, because we discussed just before getting into the session. There's nothing wrong in sometimes, due to your ability or inability to get a specific license, to get creative, but you have to be aware of your risks. And if your creativity brings risks of deportation or a criminal offense or banning from work for 5 years, is it worth it to take that risk? Like, there has
and that's
to be
the
a
risk
balance.
For doing it as a visa run, for example.
As a visa run or as buying a visa, like, you know, freelance visa things. These platforms are not correct. You cannot buy a freelance visa because in your visa and your passport is going to say out here clerk or whatever. But your sponsor is a company. So how can you be a freelancer independent? You know, service provider, if the liability in that company, which means you're legally, an employee of that company without actually having a salary, but you work on the side and you get the NOC letter, which is so
you've got
common.
An understanding.
Now, this engagement that we're speaking about is regulated by the labor law at federal level. And if by any instance one of your clients wants to put a complaint against you or your project or your services, that complaint is going to go into consumer protection. Consumer protection is going to reach out to the compliance team. Compliance team is going to come and check, how do you operate? Where is your license? And they're going to figure it out that you work illegally.
That you get a side visa from someone.
Exactly. You get a visa, but you're not registered as a freelancer, right? In that case, you're in breach of the labor law. So you can get up to 5 years of ban of working in this
Does something happen to the company who's given you?
10,000 dirham penalty.
Oh, okay. So that their liability is quite small. So
exactly. Because in the end, they gave you an employment. They easily, I know, I've seen contractual agreement that they say, oh, we gave them an NOC. They can do whatever they want in their free time.
We didn't do anything wrong.
You are the one who illegally has a commercial activity without the proper license. So they protect themselves. They're smart. And 10,000 dirham, okay. They charge much more to get you engaged into that.
Well, for an individual, which could potentially be a 5-year ban, deportation, fine, blah,
but
blah, blah.
As Marianna said, most people wouldn't even know that because they can get the visa, because so everyone does it. They think it's okay.
Well, it's just because
they think that's just the way. It's fine.
Often been a grey area that nobody's really, I guess, openly addressed.
Talked about.
And it goes back to the knowledge. It goes back to the knowledge thing again. Like, a lot of people don't actually have the knowledge of what's actually legal and not.
I think the grey area,
or they're oblivious to it. They
don't want to know.
But let's take it the other way. I think the grey area is not for the service providers. The service providers are just not telling you the truth because they want to sell it. They want to get their commission. Most of them, okay, obviously there are good people, good companies, but very little of them. Most of them work commission-based, work target-based, or even the people who they engage to be consultants are unaware of what they're advising not being fully correct, right? Yeah. So they're selling you something, they get their salaries, that's it. But at the end, their gray area is not present at the government level, okay?
Yeah.
The information is out there.
I'm going to say it's very black and white for them.
If you go and check the latest news, literally starting from March, where the government have posted huge campaigns saying, do not operate without a license, 500,000 dirham penalty.
Oh.
Exactly, to operate without a license. Do not operate from free zone into the mainland, 500,000 dirhams penalty, license suspension.
So many companies
exactly.
do that.
Do not buy visa, this is illegal labor. So you risk up to 5 years of restriction to work in the country, plus up to 50,000 in penalties. So these are publicly out there. It's a Google search.
Yeah.
It's literally a simple question. Can I be a freelancer without a license? Or can I work in the UAE without having a license? So in a way, yes, the deeper research is needed. Maybe some people prefer not to. Yeah. Or they are led by consultants and converted with that. Yes, they're misled. Correct. So in a way, I just want to do a simple exercise of comparison, which I tell to all my clients. If you buy a freelance visa, okay, if it's your friend and you don't pay for it, whatever, it's not me to judge here. I've just advised the risks. If the risks is worthy, it's up to you, right? All our life we take some risks. But if we go to buy that visa, most of the packages on the market are going to be 10, 12, 15,000 dirham to buy that visa, okay? To get a freelance permit, the cheapest option is free of charge.
Excuse me?
Exactly. Abu Dhabi 2454 free zone gives free of charge freelance permits. Why would you go and pay money if you can get it for free?
Okay.
And then you only pay for your visa, which is a 2 years renewable visa. That's it.
Okay.
But from Abu Dhabi, can you work in Dubai?
No.
Because I thought 2454 meant you had to work within 2454.
Correct. But what I'm saying is that it's a free zone jurisdiction. So you have to get a permission from 2454 to work in that jurisdiction. And you have to harvest and collaborate the clients and suppliers from that jurisdiction. So they created that hub. So it's not as simple to get it, but if you didn't check if you're eligible to get it, then you don't get it, right?
You wouldn't even know.
Just check, send them an email, contact us, let us review your profile. They have very strict types of freelance permits, but they are possible, especially for, by the way, actors, actors, musicians, whatever.
Sector,
all
isn't
the people
it?
that we work with.
Exactly, and you don't pay for the license. Okay, you pay for the registration, whatever, 2,000-3,000 dirham, and then you pay for the visa, another 5,000-6,000 dirhams, and your insurance can be as basic as whatever
as you want it to be.
Exactly, but then it's doable, right? If that does not meet the requirements, the next freelance permit will cost you 7,000 dirhams for men and 3,900 dirhams for women.
Oh God, I'm so happy to be a woman. Right
Why
now.
would you pay?
Hang on a minute, this is 2020.
But it's in the Middle East, okay?
I'll take it.
Empowering women.
All this like feminism.
I'll take it. So what does that entail? So if there's a visa that you're talking about.
That's getting you a permit. It's going to be literally a paper from that jurisdiction, because it's different free zones, that jurisdiction says that, for example, Marianna Bulbuc, freelance permit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, web developer. Okay? So
which is different to a license.
It is a license for an individual. It's not a commercial license, so it's not a business license. And to give an association to our clients, I usually say, you see, a doctor can get a university kind of permit to operate, but he needs to be licensed by health authorities to be allowed to profess and then be under a clinic. So the same is with a freelance permit. You have your diploma for what you do or your portfolio. This is a permission where the government verifies your background, verifies your experience, previous jobs that you've done, right? And then gives you the permission that yes, indeed, you are experienced.
Validating you.
Exactly. So that is a permit to operate.
And it's validating you as an individual, but not as a business.
Correct.
So hypothetically, which happens all the time here, so I'm just going to use this as a case study.
No, please.
So it's like a musician, all of a sudden, they're a single performer. They can potentially get this permit, which will allow them as an individual, but then they start booking other talent on projects, but then they become a commercial entity. That's a business. It's two very separate things. And I think that's often what we find within our industry don't fully understand. You know, you have yourself as an individual. I play the guitar, but if you're booking an orchestra, that's a very different commercial activity.
So the
but if you make sure that everyone's covered and has their own permit,
they can collaborate.
They're collaborating.
There you go.
You're not hiring
So the
them.
event company engages. You bring a few of your mates. You're all, you know, registered, and then you just all sign individual agreements with the event planner or event management company.
And the contracts and the paper trail and the payments.
Each person has their own.
You cannot subcontract to someone because you independently. And you see the description of the freelance permit says is professional engaged on hourly basis by corporations.
Okay.
Okay. So you're paid on hourly or retainer.
But if you've got the permit, that still doesn't give you the visa and residency and all of that. So how do
freelance permit allows you to generate an immigration card. So you register your permit through the authority that generates your freelance permit with the immigration system, and that's about 2,092 dirhams per year because it's yearly renewable. And then you can get your visa, and you also can get visa for your spouse, for your children, for nanny. So you can sponsor your family members as well. Yep.
7,000 for men, 3,900 for women.
Exactly.
We have to talk about this. I'm not too happy about that.
So that's the permit fee. Then you add the immigration, which is going to be
about another 2,000.
2,000, and then your visa is for 3 years in most jurisdictions. So you only pay at the beginning. And obviously, as anything in the UAE, you have normal processing and you have VIP processing and VIP processing,
which adds a few more costs.
Obviously,
a few more zeros.
But what was that D 1,000 dirham?
That the DD trader license.
This one as well.
We're going to get onto that. I've got one quick question, just going back to obviously the risk, and this is something which has become quite prevalent, is that obviously, I'm trying to think how to word this now. There's obviously, without people being legally registered, there's no recourse for that individual, I guess, then, for example, if a client doesn't pay them, for example, you know, they can't go through that system then in terms of like chasing that payment.
Obviously.
Because they're not legally registered.
Of course.
So this is something which we've obviously been trying to educate, I guess, the wider
that's
industry.
A very, very
They're
good
actually
point.
exposing themselves to operating without a license.
I was going to say,
dirham penalty.
some companies have used the COVID situation in order not to pay some of the suppliers because they don't have the legal paperwork.
And then no one's been able to chase it because they're like, if I chase it, then they'll know that I'm not legal and there's nothing I can do about it.
And not only, some companies in mainland are smart and they know that a free zone license cannot provide them legally services into the mainland directly as a consumer. So they're not paying. And if that company goes to court, they actually went against commercial companies law at the federal level.
So then
they'll lose.
Their payments are not protected.
So then they lose, but they also expose themselves to further action because...
they'll get fined. Not only will you not get the client can sit there and not pay you because they're like, you shouldn't have been working with us in the first place. And then if they want they don't want to pay, and then if the agency decides to take them to court, they'll lose anyway and then get fined on top of it. So not only did they not get paid,
they might win. For example, they might win. But if your winning is 10,000.
But your payment is 50,000.
You've actually just lost 40 grand.
40 grand. Like, congratulations.
But a lot of people know, well, not necessarily a lot of people know that, but I think a lot of corporations understand that.
And they play
they often do play that, or, you know, they manipulate the system.
Well, event industry, like we hear it all the time. Like the biggest hurdle for the event industry and freelancers is getting paid. I speak to friends. I speak
outside
to
of the COVID situation, because the COVID situation has made it a lot harder. Obviously, cash flow for everybody's been shot since February.
But it's a constant anyway.
It's always been a thing.
Constant.
It's always been a problem within our industry.
You know, you always hear it. Like you'll sit with friends, you'll be out for drinks, or colleagues, and they say, you know what, haven't been paid for 90 days, haven't been paid for 120 days, 6 months, 9 months.
Also, like I've not been paid at all.
Haven't been paid at all.
Here, I want to address the thing. If you're licensed, first of all, obviously, you can become more bold in your demands, okay? Because you're building a brand. I built BIZZMOSIS as me first, right? It was me, the brand. Then BIZZMOSIS started hiring and 20 people, now different consultants and all sorts of projects parallelly. When you're licensed, you can go bolder. You can start demanding advance payments to cover at least your basic costs and whatever. You're not going under the shadows, just, pushing and pulling from one side to another.
You're not having to bow down.
Exactly.
Because you're
and that's another reason.
Of the law.
Yeah, that's another reason. First of all, as we said, financially, you pay extra a couple of thousand. It's not even that much in getting a visa for freelance or getting properly a freelance permit and your own independent visa. So it's not a huge difference financially. Then why would you make it? Right. And secondly, with the right permit and the right licensing, you can be VAT registered when you reach the threshold. You can be subcontracted locally and internationally. You can get partnership agreements. You can create a joint venture of freelancers to, provide a more like, which we spoke about networking at the beginning, right? I don't do something, but you do that. We both have freelance permit. We create a joint venture agreement. We both go to the client and say, look, I'm going to do that. And for the same amount of package, I'll bring whatever, Lily on board, and she's going to help you with something else.
You just mentioned VAT. I mean, we've not even talked. That's going to be another topic.
That's a different topic.
But I'm going to say a lot of people who work, I guess, under the radar, they're not even VAT registered. Yet they're earning over the threshold to be, to be mandated to pay that VAT. So there's also tax avoidance.
But as freelancers, it's sometimes difficult to know what your yearly income is going to be and whether you would need to have that VAT.
Well, I guess from what you've earned the previous year.
But then years.
I think where I'm coming from is like you're a freelancer, yet you're booking talent and you're operating as a business. You're no longer a freelancer, you're a commercial entity, but you're not registered for either.
Correct.
And you're not going through the paperwork and the taxation.
In that scenario, that person is really, really walking on thin ice.
Well, I mean, because eventually, I guess like the government or the whoever are going to want that tax receipt. They want that money because it's part of the system.
But above that,
so we digress on that one. That's going to be a whole other topic, actually.
Yeah, well, we have to, definitely.
That'll be episode number 20.
Above that, you see, freelancers, a lot of them go and complain and raise awareness of the needs of the freelancers in the UAE and what platforms are needed for government to protect them as well, even from payment and whatever. But at the same time, if we don't give anything to the government, why are we entitled to expect back, right?
100%.
We're talking about a market where 80% of people have no licenses. Then as soon as COVID hit, I'm sorry for the situation they found themselves in. It's unfair, and I'm not, saying that it's okay not to pay and whatever. But then you go expecting support when you never actually gave anything towards, right? So it has to be a balance.
I think that's a very interesting comment because that's something which has come up multiple times the creative collective and entities which are trying to form through the COVID crisis. And the discussions was for many of them, it's like, well, are you legal? Because if you're not contributing to the system, you can't go then to any government entity to be like, we need support, we need you to help us.
But that expectation has been there.
That expectation has been there, but I think there's been the reality that that's never going to happen unless you become legal.
Well, you get people saying, oh, yeah, but in the UK they're getting support, or in Australia they're getting support. It's like, yeah, but they're paying tax.
Yeah, but Emiratis in this country get support as well. It's their country. Right? So in my country, yes, I do get support. Here, you coming as a foreigner, an expatriate, you want to gain, but you have to contribute as well, right? It's not only entitlement in one way or another. And this, in a way, is unfairness towards everybody. Because we discussed earlier why I have to pay, and I paid $65,000 to get my license, 10 years ago.
That's a lot.
And now the license is valid for 1,000 dirham. It's available for 1,000 dirham, and you still don't want to pay. Come on.
We'll get to that.
And how can we be competitive then? And how the market can deliver to everybody?
I was going to say, and even going back to what I was talking about previously, we supply entertainment, and often we find ourselves competing with entertainers ourselves, which don't have the right legal setup. Yet I have office, I have a visa, I pay my insurances, I pay my VAT. All of these additional costs, which put me at a commercial disadvantage from somebody who's operating illegally from their house.
And at the end of the day, the client just looks at the bottom line and what savings they get. So it makes it quite difficult for you, doesn't it?
Of course.
I mean, but this is why you need to build yourself a brand at the moment where the client no longer looks at the bottom. I started from why should I pay for your consultancy meeting to how much should I pay for your consultancy meeting, right? And you build it. And what I love about UAE, there's a lot of, as in any country, good and bad, ups and downs. And as we say, the freelancing, but not only, a lot of industries are just picking up. The government is just adjusting and getting the grasps of what should we provide, how much we should control or not, and things like that. But what I love about this environment is in the moment you get out there and you're outstanding with the quality you deliver, and you're consistent with the quality you deliver. I came in an industry where it's the biggest per capita businesses of business setup consulting, right? And people would tell me, like, come on, there's like every dog on the street has that license. How do you think it's going to succeed? And we do. We've been profitable.
You've got to be good.
May and June was the best months we've ever had in history of BIZZMOSIS. You know what I mean? And that's the proof of quality. And the same with freelancers. You grow, and then you don't have to worry for, you know...
whether someone's going to look at your day rate.
Exactly. At your bottom line. Yes, some will. Some will not. You can cater and you can have a balance, you know, the eggs in different baskets, and somewhere you do some pro bonos, sometimes whatever. But you're in the position of choice, not in the position of, please take me because I need the income, right? And that, the whole difference between the two is the license.
Huge.
It's the license, but it's the license that makes the difference, that allows you to go even to the government and say, I've paid for my license, I've done what's needed, I demand to be supported.
Yeah, you've had that. So as a business, and I've seen, you know, you get, at the moment, like as the events industry, the amount of pitches that are going out and clients wanting proposals, and it takes time and money to do proposals. And you at least, you know, when clients sort of sit there and have some unrealistic expectations or want to get a lot of work, you're able to stand there and go, as a business, I've got to say to you, 100%. I need you to answer A, B, C, and D. We've just come out of COVID. We haven't had income for a while. Please tell me how you're going to cash flow this project. You know, and you can say it with confidence and without fear, and that having that brand and build equity.
And also having that opens doors.
Exactly.
So it allows us to have the conversations with, you know, the like DTCM or Abu Dhabi Tourism and all these people because you're legal, you're respected, you've got all of your kind of like your ducks in a row, and it allows you to have very open dialogue in a business capacity.
Also, you're heard. So if you have a suggestion and you add 50 people in your industry with the freelance permit that you have or with the need you have, and you make an official letter to the government authorities that regulates it, as you say, DTCM, KHDA, Royal Family Office if need be, you're heard, right? If you write, hi, I'm Mary Jane and I'm not registered, but I do this, and can you help me? Then obviously nobody's going to pay attention. So it is a chain reaction. And I know that 15,000 dirhams, 13,000 dirhams might be a huge chunk of money for someone to put in when they have no prognosis of their sales. Like, I have no idea how am I going to sell, where am I going to sell. But my personal advice, again, personal experience worldwide, not just here, is that if you project at least enough to come on zero at the end of the year, I can guarantee you in the UAE, you're going to find beyond that. But not just the UAE. UAE is a small consumerism market. If you're licensed here and you go in these portals that now go to Saudi, go to whatever, these are huge markets, huge, and you're here, right? You're 45 minutes away from any other Middle Eastern country that pays well, that has at the moment very low competition with licensed freelancers, right? And you have that exposure. So I don't see a problem in gaining that exposure if you can be out there, you know, unafraid, right, to show yourself out. So